now 11:05. NU107 is DWNUFM at 107.5 megahertz. A loud and proud member of the KBP, NU107FM.com on the web. The home of Rock Awards 09 in high definition. Welcome to The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky on NU107. Welcome to The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky with me, Roanna. And this is actually a feature that we were supposed to do last week. Anywho, for those of you who haven't seen Vanilla Sky just yet, I really suggest that you watch this movie, especially if you're the type of person who really likes to think when you watch movies. I mean, some people like to just watch and relax, and, you know, this is usually when you watch slapstick type of comedy where everything's really simple and easy to understand. But Vanilla Sky is the type of movie where you actually have to think to really understand the concept of the movie and what it is all about. And, you know, from time to time, that's a good way to kind of exercise the brain, you know. This movie came out in 2001, and it was directed by Cameron Crowe. Now, this is the Hollywood adaptation of a Spanish film called Abre los ojos, which means open your eyes. And the film is very close to the original Spanish movie, which came out in 1997, and it was written by Alejandro Amenabar and Mateo Hill. Now, if you remember at the very beginning of Vanilla Sky, you hear this was, of course, the voice of Julia Giuliani, the character of Cameron Diaz, where she says, "Open your eyes, open your eyes." Yes, so that's actually a reference to the original title from the Spanish film. Now, Tom Cruise, who stars as the main character, David Ames, in the film, co-produced the film with Cameron Crowe, including, with Tom Cruise, the cast comprised of Penelope Cruz, who played Sophia, his kind of leading lady in the film. Cameron Diaz plays the obsessed woman who is completely in love with Tom Cruise, Julia Giuliani. Kurt Russell plays McCabe. Jason Lee plays Brian Shelby, Tom Cruise's character's best friend in the film. Now, the soundtrack received acclaim from soundtrack critics, and the film's musical selection is not perfect. It's not just perfectly evoking the emotions sought by the cast, but it is alone a compilation masterpiece. And the soundtrack is responsible in large part for making Vanilla Sky a cult classic. And a lot of other people who have seen this film, who I've asked and interviewed, and just to let you know, in the future, episodes of The Real Score would probably have guest, speakers here and there talking about their favorite films, which of course would so happen to be the feature for that episode. All right, well, more music now. Here is actually Cameron Diaz sharing her vocal stylings. And if you have the soundtrack of Vanilla Sky, it shows that the artist that plays this song, which is called I Fall Apart, is by Giuliana Gianni, which of course is a person who does not exist because this is the character's name of Cameron Diaz in the film. She does her own vocals for this song, and this one is called I Fall Apart. And remember, she's the obsessed girl who's completely in love with Tom Cruise, but he's in love with Penelope Cruz's character. You're on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky on NU107. NU107, and welcome back to The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky. Now, Penelope Cruz, who plays Sophia in the film, also starred in the Spanish version of the film, the original film called Abre los ojos, which came out in 1997. This was way before she became popular and known in Hollywood, and she actually played the same character, Sophia. Now, let me know what you think, because, this is the type of movie that you really have to think, and a lot of people have different interpretations about the last part of the film. So I'm speaking, in particular to you who have seen the film. Let me know what you think. You can send in your message through NUMSG space, your message, and send it over to 29107. What did you think about the final ending of the movie? What was it about? What was your interpretation of the film? And also to Donald and the Gladiator, Uy, Vanilla Sky, I saw this movie 2 weeks before it even hit the theaters here many years back. Ang galing-galing talaga ng mga pirata. Yes, and for somebody who hasn't seen it, like Abel Slayer, who's locked in right now, yeah, make sure you check it out. It's an interesting film, very, very original, unique concept. Of course, it's not an original film by Cameron Crowe. It's an original Spanish film, but it's a wonderful remake nonetheless. Here is another track included in the Vanilla Sky soundtrack, and this one is from R.E.M. with All the Right Friends. You're on NU107. NU107 R.E.M. All the Right Friends, and you can add the Facebook of The Real Score. Just search for it on your Facebook account. Just type The Real Score, and real is spelled as R-E-E-L. If you have NU107 on your Facebook, the group NU107, then it is on the favorites section of the NU107 page. So you just add up The Real Score to find out more feature films, and also to request, because I do have a lot of films lined up already requested by, well, you. For example, Rockstar. There's also going to be Almost Famous. What? What? No, okay. There's a lot of other films, so it's off the top of my head. I can't remember anymore, but there's a lot of films. So, based on what is requested, most of the time, that is usually what I try to put in for the next feature. And speaking of R.E.M., let's hear another track. Just like Radiohead, R.E.M. also has 2 tracks in the soundtrack. This one is from R.E.M. as well, and this one is called Sweetness Follows. You're on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky on NU107. This is The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky. That was R.E.M. with Sweetness Follows. Now, Kurt Russell agreed to do the film without reading the script, and the title Vanilla Sky was actually considered for an earlier movie that was done by Cameron Crowe, and that was Almost Famous, which so happens to be in the lineup for future Real Score episodes. This movie came out in 2000, Almost Famous. The original title for Almost Famous was actually Untitled. However, DreamWorks would not allow the title of a movie to be untitled, so Cameron Crowe titled the bootleg edition of Almost Famous on the DVD as Untitled. Now, this is the first film that I ever saw Tom Cruise where he actually did not look good. Of course, it was intentional, because for those of you who have forgotten about the film, like Rowie Capolinas, who asked on Facebook and just chatted me up earlier, doesn't Tom Cruise have a scar? Yes, he eventually gets a scar, more like scars. Basically, Tom Cruise's character plays this son of a millionaire who has this big corporation. So he's this young owner of a big corporation, a big company, and he's, the ideal basically man of independence. He's rich, he's young, and he's very good looking. So he basically has everything he has. And he falls in love with the character of, what's her face? Penelope Cruz, Sophia, and right after he falls in love with her and realizes he doesn't want to, be a swinger anymore, he wants to be in love and to dedicate his time with one girl only, he gets into a car accident while he was in a car with Cameron Diaz's character. She plays this psycho-obsessed woman who's, super obsessed with Tom Cruise. And after that happens, he transforms from a very attractive, good-looking, rich guy to a very depressed, well, not so good-looking guy because of the accident. It was such a big accident that it damaged his skeletal bones in his face, and just, he completely had to go through reconstructive surgery. But still, after that, he would have to wear a mask just to look normal and not to look fierce, scary in front of people. And it has a lot of scenes after that, which I won't probably divulge as early as now, because I want you to tell me what you think about the last part of the film. It has a lot of interpretations by a lot of people. I have a couple of ones that Cameron Crowe himself has declared as the actual interpretation of the film, but, just to see if you truly understood the film or if you were close to it, let me know what you think. NUMSG space, your message, and send it over to 29107. So that's basically the whole, kind of basic storyline of Vanilla Sky. It's about, maybe I shouldn't tell you more until later when you tell me what your interpretation of it is. But hopefully that kind of helps you, remember the film Vanilla Sky, because, I mean, it did come out in 2001. That's, about 8 years ago. All right, more music. Here is from Josh Rouse with a song called Directions, and this is another track included in the Vanilla Sky soundtrack. You're still on The Real Score with me, Roanna, on NU107.
Don't like the direction you are going to.
NU107, Directions by Josh Rouse from the Vanilla Sky soundtrack. And you're on The Real Score with me, Roanna. Now, Rotten Tomatoes, who is, of course, very notorious for critiquing movies in Hollywood. They usually score it based on, Rotten Tomatoes. So they've given this movie actually a 39%, and that's not a very good score. Now, the consensus says that, Vanilla Sky is an ambitious mix of genres, and it collapses into an incoherent jumble. Cruz's performance lacks depth, and it's hard to feel sympathy for his narcissistic character. Well, I strongly disagree, because I believe that, that is part of his character in the film. I mean, if you're a young heir to, a big corporation, you're a late 20-something guy, you're rich, you drive a sports car, you live in a nice house, and you can have everything you want and have everything you want, and you look good, too. I mean, most people, that's the typical character of what would happen to a person if they had everything they wanted. And that's why the movie is all about what if all of that were taken away. So it's part of what the point of the movie is. And, really, personally, I love this movie. And the performance of Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz were really great. And the directing style had a very eerie, artsy, sad, melancholy feel to it, which I'm sure you can hear from the music alone that was chosen to be part of the soundtrack to complement the story, Vanilla Sky. And, the use of sepia-ish colors perhaps added to that as well. And I do remember vividly that after I saw this film, I just had to think for a few minutes, probably an hour, to internalize and understand the whole reason why the movie was made. I know it's not an original Hollywood film, it's an original Spanish film, and I haven't seen the Spanish film, although I do intend to see it in the future, because I hear that it is even better. This is from the usual blatantly obvious films, out there nowadays. Films that make you think is definitely, something that you wouldn't easily forget, because it does make you think. Some other films that I can specifically remember that are similar to the thinking type of movies would be Donnie Darko, the first one, not the second one, 12 Monkeys, and even Fight Club, for example, So what do you think? Let me know. Did you like Vanilla Sky? Did you not? Do you agree with Rotten Tomatoes that it was a rotten movie? Or did you like the film? Let me know. Type in NUMSG space and your message. Send it to 29107. Or if you're online, simply add The Real Score on your Facebook account. Just search for it. Or you can add me up on Facebook. Just search for my name, Roanna Ruiz. Roanna. Last name is like Lorenzo Ruiz, although he is not my relative. All right, up next is another track included in the soundtrack. And you guys have heard this before here on NU107. And it's from the late, great Jeff Buckley. This is about the time that he wakes up in Penelope Cruz's character's house, knowing that he has just fallen in love with her. And this is right before he gets into that horrible, terrible accident, which after that, everything changes. Here is Last Goodbye by Jeff Buckley on NU107. NU107, and that was Jeff Buckley with Last Goodbye. And if you recall the first part of the film where Tom Cruise wakes up, and that's where you hear the whispering, "Open your eyes." And he dresses up, and you see his beautiful apartment, and he goes down to his beautiful sports car, and he drives through Times Square, and he starts freaking out because there is absolutely not a single person at Times Square, and that is close to impossible because it's the busiest, place, basically one of the busiest places in America, And for that scene with Tom Cruise alone in Times Square, it's not computer enhanced. The production team was given unprecedented permission to shut down Times Square for one Sunday just for the shoot of the film. And at the time, the news ticker was providing updates on the Bush-Gore election. And to avoid dating the film, Cameron Crowe got permission to change the NASDAQ sign in post-production. I'm pretty sure that cost a lot of money. All right, up next is from the idol of Kurt Cobain and a few other musicians. And, of course, this is Jacob Dylan's dad from the Wallflowers. Here is Bob Dylan with Fourth Time Around. And you're on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky on NU107. David, Tom Cruise's character, wakes up in the morning. You're right, not Cameron Diaz's voice. It was Sophia's voice saying, "Open your eyes," in her Spanish accent. And Ketch says that Vanilla Sky is his all-time favorite movie, and that he agrees that it's a movie that really makes one think, and it's not something that probably everybody can appreciate unless you really like watching movies that make you think. Mao says on the text line that she really liked the line, "I'll see you in another world when we are both cats." Now, just to give you an idea, that maybe the world we could be reunited with the one we love. Yes, true, Mel. Actually, that line that was said by Penelope Cruz's character right before Tom Cruise's character jumps off from the building at the very last part. This was actually in reference to how Sophia's character, Sophia's character played by Penelope Cruz she actually made up this line herself. The thing is, on the interviews with Cameron Crowe and Penelope Cruz, she said that she blurted it out of frustration because she was trying to explain how something was, and I guess because she really had the closest perception to how the original film was, because she played the exact same character in the original Spanish version. And so she was explaining something to Cameron Crowe, and probably things got lost in translation from Spanish to English, and Cameron Crowe couldn't understand what she was trying to say. So she just said, "I'll tell you in another life when we're both cats." And Cameron Crowe liked that line so much that he included it in the film for her character, Sophia. There you go. Well, up next, we've got something from Chemical Brothers, and this one is called Where Do I Begin? You're still on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky with me, Roanna, on NU107. NU107, Chemical Brothers right there with Where Do I Begin? You're still on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky. Now, just to let you know that the title is a reference. Vanilla Sky is a reference to depictions of skies in some of the paintings of Claude Monet. And Cameron Crowe has noted that the presence of quote-unquote vanilla skies identifies the first lucid dream scene. This is actually the morning reunion after the club scene where Tom Cruise's character wakes up in the street after passing out drunk. When David, played by Tom Cruise, is being processed after his arrest, and the placard around his neck for the mugshots reads, in code, "When did the dream become a nightmare?" Now, some of the letters are literal, others are represented by numbers indicating their place in the alphabet. So that was actually like a secret code put in the film for, viewers, an audience who want to really dissect the film. References to the Seven Dwarves may be a clue as well. This, of course, alluding to Snow White when he comes into the boardroom and says, he basically, enumerates every single person that works for his father, who now works for him. Grumpy, who else are those Snow White dwarves? All of them. And there was, all of those characters in there. And, where you can tell that it's kind of a fantasy film where, just like Snow White, who ends up being asleep after she bites the apple, it's kind of like this movie where he ends up being in a dream where he is asleep. But then again, let me know what you think about the interpretation. What did you think happened at the end of the film? If you still remember, this is a film that came out in 2001, but if you do remember, what do you think is the whole ending? I mean, what happens? Was it all just a dream, or Was it all just, like in the future, and he was basically frozen and in the suspended animation, or was it all just in his imagination, even from the very beginning? So let me know what you think, and later on I'll tell you what exactly Cameron Crowe says is the interpretation of the actual film of, the ending of Vanilla Sky. Here is from Todd Rundgren. This one is Can We Still Be Friends? It's a very sad song, and I think it's perfectly used in the film because this was after he had become disfigured, and all of a sudden, of course, Sophia's character, Sophia, played by Penelope Cruz's character, can't seem to, see him the same any longer, appearance-wise, that is. Here it is, Can We Still Be Friends? You're on The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky on NU107.
We can't play this game anymore, but can we still be
Welcome back to The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky, and we're down to the last song of today's episode. Just to let you know that Ebert said that the ending explains the mechanism of our confusion rather than telling us for sure what actually happened. Now, Richard Rupert greatly enjoyed the film, calling it the second best film of 2001. Here's the interpretation. According to Cameron Crowe's commentary, there are 4 different interpretations of the ending, so any one of these 4 is pretty much accurate. First one, where tech support is telling the truth. So this is the interpretation where it's 150 years later after David Ames kills himself, and everything after his passing out on the sidewalk was just a lucid dream. Another interpretation is that the entire movie is a dream, as evidenced by the sticker on David's car that reads 2/30/01, which basically is February 30, and that doesn't occur in the Gregorian calendar because February only has 28 days. Now, the entire movie, this is the third interpretation, the entire movie after the crash is a dream that takes place while David is in a coma. And the last interpretation, which is also pretty much accurate, is that the entire movie is the plot to the book that Brian is writing. I believe Brian is played by Jason Lee, the best friend of Tom Cruise in the film. There you go. So down to the last song of today's episode. Again, I'd like to thank Clark, Abel Slayer, Roe Capolinas, Mao Ketch, and Donald. I don't know whether to thank you or not. Because, okay, so he says now that he was just joking that it's not really prosthetics that, it's actually prosthetics that Tom Cruise used. I would have loved to believe that it wasn't. Because I think it can be done, and it really would show how a true actor can show what true acting really is all about without the use of prosthetics and really just doing it, raw. Like everything on your own. Well, anyhow, Tom Cruise did get an award for Best Actor. Cameron Diaz also received Best Supporting Actress. Paul McCartney received Best Song Award for the first track that you heard for today's episode, Vanilla Sky. That was the title of the song. Now, this movie was budgeted at $68 million, but it grossed at $203 million. So I'm pretty sure that all the NASDAQ closing and all that in Times Square, the money that they paid onto that, well, it pretty much paid out. And with awesome characters in the cast, also, actors, great actors in the film, and the whole kind of feel that the film really makes you experience is worth it, and that's why it was commercially a success. Catch The Real Score next week for the Matrix soundtrack. This is Roanna for The Real Score featuring Vanilla Sky. Curtains down and fading out on NU107.